Good morning. Welcome, everyone. The committee will come to order. We're here to consider two nominations this morning. Dr. Linda Capuano to be the Administrator of the Energy Information Administration, and Dr. Tim Petty to be Assistant Secretary of the Interior for Water and Science. Dr. Petty is a friend. He's a trusted advisor to many of us. We've benefited from his expertise on both water and science issues for quite some time. He is Senator Rish's Deputy Legislative Director. He's also served as a legislative assistant covering many issues that come before this committee, including the Western Water and USGS issues that will be part of his portfolio at the Department of Interior. When Dr. Petty is confirmed, it will actually mark his return to the Water and Science hallway at Interior. That's because he worked there during the Bush administration as a Deputy Assistant Secretary and for a time as the acting head of the office for which he is now nominated. Dr. Petty is very well qualified, and I think an excellent choice for this position. I look forward to filling out Secretary Zinke's water team, and I recognize that having a team of professionals in place at Interior on these issues is important to many on our committee, not to mention millions of Americans living out in the West. There are a lot of good things that we can say about Dr. Petty, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge his connection to my home state. He earned his PhD from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Terrific. I'm sure we can all agree on him and his qualifications, but certainly his choice of doctoral programs clearly demonstrates his excellent judgment, so we acknowledge that. We will also consider the nomination of Dr. Linda Capuano to be the Administrator of the Energy Information Administration at the Department of Energy. Dr. Capuano has broad experience in the energy and technology industries. She has held senior positions at a number of companies and co-founded a startup venture that commercialized ceramic superconductor technology. Dr. Capuano is currently a fellow at Rice University in the Baker Institute for Public Policy Center for Energy Studies. She's also on the faculty of Rice's Graduate School of Business. Her distinct qualifications and robust work history make her a good fit to be at the helm of EIA as we move toward American energy dominance. I welcome you both to the committee. I thank you for your willingness to serve our nation. It would certainly be my hope and intention to move the nominations quickly, reporting you from the committee hopefully as soon as next week. I would hope to confirm you both before Christmas, along with the other well-qualified Interior nominees who've been stuck on the Senate calendar now for several months, far longer than their predecessors in the previous administration. So we want to try to get these processed as soon and as expeditiously as we can. So again, thank you both for being with us this morning. We will look forward to your comments. I will now turn to Senator Cantwell for her comments this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The two nominations before the committee this morning are important because Dr. Petty and Dr. Capuano, if confirmed, will represent and be responsible for agencies where we depend on sound science and reliable data. Public policy needs to be based on sound science and honest information. Policymakers can draw different conclusions from the facts, but they should never have the facts distorted or manipulated to justify policy choices. So it is vitally important that the scientists and economists in the Department of Interior and Department of Energy remain independent and the integrity of their work be protected from partisan ideology. That is why the two nominations we have before us this morning are so important. The Assistant Secretary of Water and Science is responsible for overseeing the Geological Survey, which is one of the premier science agencies in the federal government. The Geological Survey provides the nation with science about water, energy, minerals, and other natural resources, about floods, fires, earthquakes, volcanoes, and other natural disasters, about the health of our ecosystems and our environment, and about climate change. It is essential that this important work continue and that the scientists who do it are protected from the public interference and that their work inform policymakers rather than the other way around. In addition, the Assistant Secretary of Water and Science oversees the Bureau of Reclamation, which grew out of the Geological Survey. It is the nation's largest water supplier and the second largest producer of hydroelectric power. It provides water to millions of our citizens and millions of our farmland that produce much of our food. The job of the Administrator of Energy Information Administration is no less important. The Energy Information Administration was established in the Department of Energy to collect, analyze, evaluate, and disseminate data about our energy resources and production, demand, and the technology needed to manage our energy needs for the future. It also collects energy pricing data needed to protect consumers and ensure the integrity of competitive energy markets. Simply put, the two nominees before us this morning have been each nominated to lead premier information gathering agencies in their departments. I am pleased that both are high qualified and have great professional experiences. I look forward to hearing from them on how their views on these agencies and their oversight will add to those comments I just mentioned on science and the independence and integrity of those agencies. So I welcome both the nominees and their family and friends here today, and thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. Senator Risch, I would invite you to provide comments regarding Dr. Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It is bittersweet to do this because Tim has been an integral member of our team. Tim and Elaine. Elaine's here. I'm sure Tim will introduce Elaine when we start. Have been important to my office for the almost decade that I've been here. Tim's had a distinguished career in public service and is exceptionally qualified to serve as Department of Interior's Assistant Secretary for Water and Science. To those of us, and there's a lot of us in various offices that do know Tim, who he's worked with, recognize he has a deep understanding of the complex nexus of water and science. In fact, Tim used, when he was working on his doctorate, he used the Boise River, which is a river system that flows directly through the capital city, and which has had a history of flooding over the years and has a dam system now on it. He used this particular river to study predictability of potential flooding and used it for part of his peer-reviewed journals for his doctorate. Tim's also initiated and spearheaded the interest in many of the various Senate offices, even though he worked for me, of using geospatial mapping for a myriad of purposes, including mapping forest fires, fish and wildlife management, dam effectiveness, and other resources. This geospatial mapping information has added to already existing statistical analysis, giving senators a deeper and better understanding of their states. Prior to joining my office, Tim served as Acting Assistant Secretary and Deputy Assistant Secretary for Water and Science at the Department of Interior under President George W. Bush, as you've noted, Madam Chairman, and did an exceptional job there. He will be returning to that. Previously, Tim worked in the private sector for more than 10 years in California and Indiana as a geologist and a hydrologist. He's earned a PhD from the University of Alaska. Madam Chairman, I think you properly note that University of Alaska has an outstanding program for the discipline that he is interested in. Working with Tim for these years, I'm confident that he will approach each issue that comes before him with the same thoughtfulness and deliberate consideration that I have seen firsthand. And although I really hate to lose Tim, I mean that sincerely. I know that the Department of Interior in the United States of America will benefit from his experience and expertise at the agency. So I commend him to the committee and to the Senate. And Madam Chairman, I would like to have introduced for the record some communications from a number of organizations that are supporting this. The Natural Water Resources Association, Idaho Water Users Association, California Waterfowl, Delta Waterfowl, the Tehoma-Colusa Canal Authority, and the University of Alaska Fairbanks, all of whom are supporting the
They will certainly be incorporated as part of the record, and we'll put an asterisk next to the one from the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senator Risch. At this time, I would ask that you both rise and would ask that you, just a second here. The rules of the committee, which apply to all nominees, require that they be sworn in connection with their testimony. So now that you have risen, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give to the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Before you begin your statements, you may go ahead and be seated here. I will ask you 3 questions addressed to each nominee before the committee. Will you be available to appear before this committee and other congressional committees to represent departmental positions and respond to issues of concern to the Congress? Yes. Are you aware of any personal holdings, investments, or interests that could constitute a conflict or create an appearance of such a conflict should you be confirmed and assume the office to which you have been nominated by the President?
No.
And are you involved, or do you have any assets held in blind trusts?
No.
Okay. We will commence then. At this point in time, I would ask each of you to provide the committee a little bit of the background as well as the opportunity to introduce any family that you may have with you or strong supporters. We certainly encourage that as well. Dr. Petty, we will begin with you, if you would like to proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Murkowski, Ranking Member Cantwell, and obviously the distinguished members of this committee. I also want to thank you, Senator Risch, for your kind introduction, but more importantly, even your leadership and service to the state of Idaho and to the United States. You have been a real leader to me and to many. It is a distinct honor and a privilege to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee to serve the American people as Assistant Secretary for Water and Science at the Department of Interior. I wish to thank Secretary Zinke for his support and confidence in this position. And I would like to take a moment and acknowledge my wife, Elaine Petty, here behind me, and actually one of my 4 siblings, Pam, who is also here. It traveled from Indiana to be here with me today. And I'd also like to just mention and thank a lot of my friends and colleagues who are here with me as well, who have been a huge support and insight for me for these many years, who are also joining us today. So if I may, I was born and raised on a family farm in Grant County, Indiana. I'm proud to be the son of Esther and Morris Petty. My father, a farmer and a large animal cattle breeder, was killed in an automobile accident when I was but a young individual, and my amazing mother raised 5 of us on the family farm. Working on the family farm, cultivating agricultural fields, harvesting fall crops, milking cows, baling hay, and watching the growth of life all around me was fundamental in preparation for my entire career. My mother raised all of us kids with strong family values, solid work ethic, genuine integrity, and a high commitment to education and a belief in God. I was inspired to study earth science from a young age. Our farm was bordered by an important river and watershed in northeastern part of Indiana, and the water fascinated me. A stone quarry and gravel pit was also on our property, which also created the love for geology at an early age as well. This interest led me to pursue a Bachelor's of Science degree in geoscience at Purdue University. I then worked in Indiana, California, and abroad as a staff geologist and hydrogeologist, learning the trade of ground surveying, mapping, surface and subsurface hydrology, earthquake investigation, groundwater contamination, as well as water quality research. After working in the private sector, I joined the staff of the Senate Republican Conference under 2 consecutive chairmen, Senator Connie Mack of Florida, as well as Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. During that time, I also earned a master's degree in business from the University of Maryland to help hone my management and technology skills. While still working in the legislative branch, I was tapped to be the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Water and Science under and with Secretary Kempthorne. At DOI, I supported the leadership of the U.S. Geological Survey and the Bureau of Reclamation. This included providing oversight and policy technical review of programs that are so vital, including stream gauge, irrigation water demand, ground monitoring, earthquakes, volcanoes, geospatial mapping, just to name a few. Also, I want to highlight that Secretary Kempthorne also designated me at that time at DOI to represent several groups, including the executive principal to the Gulf Coast Hypoxia Task Force, as well as the DOI Principal Review Team leader for the Interagency Panel for Climate Change. At the end of the Bush administration, I returned to the legislative branch to work for Senator Risch. And Senator Risch was so kind to outline so many of those different areas. But while also working here in the Senate, I received my PhD in water science and policy at the School of Engineering and Mining at the University of Alaska. Together, I believe my experience in education has prepared me for this position to effectively serve the American people. I commit myself to provide the best informed advice possible for Secretary Zinke. I will listen to and work with the committee and Congress in these areas. Chairman Murkowski, Ranking Member Cantwell, and members of the committee, I thank you again for the consideration of my nomination. Throughout my time in the Senate, I have had the privilege of working with virtually every member on the committee, and more specifically the staff, in a good faith effort to build consensus and workable solutions on these issues before us. If confirmed, I look forward to continuing those efforts as we pursue the common goal of securing American water and science future. I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Petty. Dr. Capuano, welcome.
And distinguished members of the committee, it's an honor and privilege to appear before you as the nominee for Administrator of the Energy Information Administration. I'm grateful to the President and to the Secretary Perry for their confidence in trusting me with this important assignment. EIA is the statistical and analytical agency of the Department of Energy. It collects and disseminates a wide range of energy information covering energy production, stocks, demand, imports, exports, prices, technologies, and emissions. As a researcher and analyst, I appreciate the importance of EIA's independent role in providing unbiased information and analysis to inform policymakers, markets, and members of the public in making informed energy decisions across the public and private sector. If confirmed by the Senate, I will bring to the position the experience of a career that began with applying materials science and engineering to products in computer memory, semiconductors, and power units, and evolved to focus on energy in the electricity and petroleum sectors. I've also spent my career planning for and managing change, the rapidity with which technology is changing everything from the production of oil and gas to the integration of distributed generation, including storage, technologies, and microgrids, is a challenge for EIA that I would willingly embrace. I understand the important role that all of our fuels play in delivering energy to consumers. I understand this committee has had specific requests of EIA and analysis of energy and financial markets, energy consumption surveys, and expanded coverage of distributed generation. If confirmed, these programs would remain a priority, and I would work closely with the committee on these and other matters. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Capuano. We'll begin with 5-minute rounds here so that we may have an opportunity for second round for folks if they are so inclined. Dr. Petty, let me start with you. I talk a lot in this committee about the growing dependency that we have in this nation when it comes to minerals. When I say dependency, it's dependency on outside sources. Last year, the United States imported 100% of 20 different minerals and at least 50% of another 30. I have likened it to the situation that we were in some years back when we were always talking about our reliance overseas for oil and how that made us vulnerable as a nation from an energy security perspective, but also from a national security perspective. Well, we're doing much better on the oil side, but in my view, we are going in the wrong direction when it comes to mineral security. Can you speak just briefly to the role that you believe that USGS can play in our efforts to lessen that dependency, and whether you think that the agency, USGS, requires additional statutory authority that might be helpful or necessary to address this?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Absolutely. I mean, your opening comments specifically on minerals is really a critical aspect, both in obviously for Alaska and working these many years, even with the state of Idaho. Critical minerals are in both of these locations. And so with USGS being able to be the principal gathering of that information on those specific type of minerals, it is critical that we give full support to the U.S. Geological Survey in these priorities. I've been here on many years of the briefings that has actually taken place in this hearing room, and with the testimonies that the different experts from the U.S. Geological Survey who have come to this specific committee and highlighting the importance and gathering that information. It is up to, obviously, the committee to continue giving direction and support to how the U.S. Geological Survey can support each one of the individual states and members, as well as this whole country, in those important value of those minerals. So I look forward to working with you, your staff, as we continue to pursue exactly how we need to get better data to this committee specifically so that we can support the decisions that you'll need to make into the future.
Thank you. Dr. Capuano, you mentioned the independent role of EIA and the fact that it is held out to be this unbiased arbiter, if you will, of data. I know that this committee certainly looks to the information that comes from EIA, and we want to be able to rely on not only its accuracy, but really a very unbiased view. And I think it's fair to say that when you have political and policy questions that come together, there can be great discussions about whether or not there is some bias that is brought to it. But when we're looking at baseline predictions of future energy markets and how different regulatory environments or different legal scenarios might change that baseline, this job working within EIA becomes more than a little bit complicated. Can you, basically what I'm looking for this morning is the assurance that your work within EIA will be one that keeps us from the politicization or the bias that one can see. I believe that the EIA needs to maintain that truly independent role, and I'd like you to speak to that.
I will bring, if appointed to this position, I will bring the years of experience I have in technology training and sorting out issues around data versus opinion. And so I am very committed to working with EIA to make sure that the data is high quality, that it's credible, and that it is not biased. And I'll just do my best to work to do that. Thank you.
Senator Cantwell.
Dr. Petty, welcome. I'm sure the Boilermakers are very proud of you. The Yakima Basin project, I think you've probably had a chance, just because of its regional significance, had a chance to get familiar with that. It's very integrated in its planning. Do you support that project and making sure that it gets funded?
Yeah, Senator Cantwell, absolutely. I look forward to working, obviously, with you specifically. I have been working on multiple years on that specific water project, working with your staff, which is a critical part into the Part 3 section of where we're at now in that specific project. So as we move forward, Bureau of Reclamation has been up here on numerous occasions to testify of what has been taking place there, interacting with Senator Risch on specifically what is important is how the state of Washington has actually stepped up in a huge way in this project as well. And I think there's some really good capabilities there for us to continue to develop in working with you on that and your staff.
So you support continued funding?
Yes, continue with reclamations, also recommendations as well.
Well, I think it's a great example of where we need to go on a problem that's not going away. And by that I mean, I think it's a great example of where we need to go on other projects across the nation to more quickly expedite our response to drought conditions and things that we're facing. So
yes,
look forward to working with you on that. Dr. Capuano, on energy information, do you think EIA needs to analyze energy future contracts and commodity swaps and derivatives and how they affect the day-to-day oil price?
That's a really good question. It's a very complex issue, and as I move, if I am appointed to this position, I'll spend time trying to understand the details of that. But again, our role in EIA would be to provide the data that would be necessary to be able to do that kind of analysis.
If you could take a look at that, this is language that we've passed out of the Senate, and so we think it's
I commit to take a look at it.
Yes, that'd be great, and you can give us an answer on it. It's very important that our energy markets are properly policed, and I know you mentioned distributed generation several times in your comments. That's great. We definitely have seen a lot of shenanigans in the energy market, and hopefully we'll continue to have a strong FERC that plays an oversight role that polices them in a proper way. But at the same time, you need information, and oftentimes the kinds of activities that we can see in manipulation, you can see right in the energy data. And that's why it's so important that you continue to play that oversight role in an important way. So to me, you need to collect information on a fully integrated financial market so that you understand the impacts. We had this for a long discussion with the in the Enron crisis about how much future contract price affected the spot price market as well. And of course, during that time period, there was unbelievable manipulation, and so consequently caused great havoc. Senator Risch and I were representing utilities and authorities that had to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in extra fees that we never should have paid. Had to bail out California when we probably never should have had to. I don't think BPA ever got recompensated for the amount of money that they ended up paying into California during the crisis. So it wreaked havoc on the West Coast, and we never want to see it again. So having good policing on the energy information is critical to us.
And I do look forward to having more conversations on that topic and understanding what EIA could provide that you could use.
Great.
And then,
well, we'll get you the language that passed out of the Senate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. Senator Risch.
Senator Cantwell, thank you for reminding me how much fun it was to bail out California. Madam Chairman, I really don't have any questions. I've spent so much time with Tim, but I want to give everybody the opportunity to have questions. But Tim, I wonder if you could take just a couple minutes and talk about some of the work that you've done on the Boise River that's so important to the people in the Treasure Valley and Idaho. Well, you've been on my staff.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Absolutely. It has been an amazing experience and privilege to look at and focus in on the Boise River, working with the Army Corps of Engineers and obviously the number of dams that the Bureau of Reclamation holds specifically on that dam. It's a combination of how do you balance the needs for the water irrigators and all the agricultural components around the Boise complex and the Boise project, as well as balancing flood control. And that is so much of what the West is about. It's a high plain desert, and so once you put water on that amazing soil, it produces an incredible amount of productivity agriculturally, but yet at the same time, it's the capital city of our state, of the state of Idaho. And so that combination is always in a complex way where you're dealing with those years of even drought and years of trying to manage to hold those specific areas of periods of flood. And that city is always on pins and needles on periods when there is significant spring rain, because you also have to rely on other agencies in that area of snow accumulation, how to manage it, and how to work together. And that is an amazing part of what both Governor Otter and yourself with your years' experience is you're working with all the agencies to really move forward in those specific focus on both water service as well as flood control, which ties in both why USGS's water center there is in Boise, but also the headquarters of the Northwest Bureau of Reclamation's headquarters are there as well in Boise. So it really creates a nexus for a lot of important data and information so that both local, state, and federal can work together.
Thanks, Tim. I'll yield back my time, Madam Chairman.
Senator Hrona.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is to both Dr. Petty and Dr. Capiano. You have both been nominated to lead agencies where independent scientific research is very critical to the mission of those agencies. Are both of you committed to scientific data to inform policy actions?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Again, to both of you, is climate change real? Yes or no? You're scientists.
Yeah.
Is climate change real?
The EIA provides unbiased data to inform those kinds of discussions. They're very complex and the environment is very important. And as the administrator of EIA, if I am appointed, it would not be wise for me to take a position on any particular issue, but to make sure that accurate and credible data is provided so those issues can be debated and discussed.
So you're saying that you sit here and you tell us that you don't know whether climate change is real or not?
No, I said that it would be inappropriate for me if I was appointed as an EIA administrator to take a position on such a highly debated topic.
Do you acknowledge that most of the scientific community have said that climate change is real? And in fact, the Department of Defense has testified that climate change is a tremendous issue for them, impacting our national security.
If you're asking if I'm aware of the debate, yes, I am very aware of the debate.
And that most of the evidence and the scientific community say that climate change is real. Do you acknowledge?
Again, I'm aware that there is a lot of debate on that, and there are those kinds of statements out there. But again, for me to take a position would introduce a bias that would hinder me as the director of.
But you both said that you believe that scientific research should inform. This is not about bias. It's about, we're relying on both of you to provide us with scientific data, not political positions that would inform our decisions. So, Dr. Petty, what is your view? Is climate change real?
Yes, Senator, I want to just make sure that it's clear that climate change is real.
Thank you.
And
should our policies reflect that fact, that climate change is real?
as for
I'll ask
me,
you.
Yeah, I think
Eddie?
it's very important that we get the scientific data in the hands of decision makers.
You are both going to be working in an administration where the president denies the reality of climate change, and I would like to know, particularly from you, Dr. Petty, since you at least acknowledge that climate change is real, how would you react if you felt political pressure to suppress data or shape results to fit a political agenda, i.e. that climate change is not real? Can you give me an example of when in your public life, because you have worked for a number of political people as well as administrations, when in your professional life you have stood up to political pressure to put forth what you believe is science?
Yes, Senator, and thank you for that question. I think it's important that we realize that in the science community and as a scientist and looking at peer review, that it's important that the science is clearly communicated in that area of resources that it then can be provided to the specific decision makers.
So can you describe a time in your public life or your a time that you've worked in at various political offices where you've stood up to political pressure? Because that's part of your doctoral research, scientific knowledge into political action. You have a commitment to science to inform our policy decisions. When have you stood up to political pressure? Can you describe a time when that happened?
I can give you some examples of where I have seen and worked with it, specifically working at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, specifically on the Tanana River, which has been part of my research, where you're looking at different years at different times, there is impact that takes place. And as you build on those different research areas, you're always challenged with those different scientific review. And so for me to be able to respond back to different examples is in the science community, there are different reports that come out and you have to interact with those science communities because the scientific method and science of that is important to facilitate.
So are you saying that you have always stood up to political pressure, that your position is that you will stand by your scientific research? And that's what you intend to do with this administration?
I would very much want to commit to you that it's important that the science community is also heard and that their research that they're putting forward is also heard. on both communities that are supporting in those different research areas?
Well, with this administration, your voice is going to be very, very important, and it's going to need to be very loud. And I look forward to, should you be confirmed, to hear what you have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will have further questions for our witnesses.
Thank you, Senator
later.
Rahona. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Dr. Capuano and Dr. Petty for your service. Congratulations on your appointments. Thank you for being here today. Dr. Petty, I have to admit, while I can forgive your association with Senator Risch and the work in his office, I don't know that I can ever forgive any association of water work in California. As a Coloradan, I'm very nervous about that. So, thank you for your willingness to serve. And Dr. Capuano, of course, University of Colorado, and your background, great to see a fellow University of Colorado Buffalo before the committee. So thank you both. In your testimony, you talked about the work of the Bureau of Reclamation, obviously something very important to us in the West, particularly in Colorado, when it comes to water storage and delivery. I want to talk a little bit about how vitally important a project the Bureau of Reclamation has in Colorado called the Arkansas Valley Conduit, affecting about 50,000 of my constituents. This is a 130-mile pipeline, and more millions than 130, with spurs that would serve as many as 40 communities, over 50,000 people east of Pueblo, Colorado. It's a project that would deliver filtered water to an area that is facing economic challenges and certainly water quality challenges. We have to make sure that we're supplementing existing water supplies because of increasing compliance issues from the federal and state governments regarding salinity, radionuclide contaminations, and fresh groundwater availability. This project, the Arkansas Valley Conduit, was authorized by Congress in 1962. President Kennedy actually came to Pueblo, Colorado as part of this effort. It wasn't until 2009 where we changed some of the legislation surrounding the Arkansas Valley Conduit and the cost share agreements to a 65-35 split that allowed this project to move forward. In 2017, Reclamation, as well as the Southeast Colorado Water Conservancy District, along with Pueblo Water, began discussions about a plan that would help change the layout of the pipeline design, a new concept that they came up with that would dramatically decrease the cost of the project. And it is basically moving the pipeline a little bit further down the way so that they can hook up into Pueblo Water and cut off some of the distance the pipeline would be required to go. So in instances like this, where a project sponsor successfully pitches a partnership that successfully reduces and drastically reduces the timeline and the cost of the project, can I get your commitment that Reclamation will give projects like the Arkansas Valley Conduit fair consideration, that it will be done, that you'll do everything you can to make sure the regulatory and administrative processes don't endlessly bog down projects like this, and that you'll do what you can to make the case on the value and the advanced timeline at OMB?
Yes, Senator, absolutely. I want to make sure that it's clear. I was here in the hearings when you asked those same exact questions with Secretary Zinke, as well as the nomination and now confirmed Deputy Secretary Barnhart. And so both of them have made sure that you and your staff will be dealing with those specifically individually. I think Secretary Zinke has put together a great team in the Water and Science Hallway, working with Commissioner Berman on these specific issues. And we look forward to obviously working with you and your staff specifically to make sure that we can bring the full support of Reclamation into those specific areas and projects.
Clean, abundant, affordable water, obviously a promise Congress made in 1962, and I'd like to see that move from
absolutely
pipe dream to pipeline and make sure we get this done. The other issue I want to talk to you about, Dr. Petty, real quick, is in August 2015, as you know, EPA triggered a 3 million gallon spill of acid mine drainage into the Animas River in southwestern Colorado. This area of Colorado is now a Superfund site. EPA is responsible for remediation of the mines within the boundaries of the Superfund listing, but there are over 160,000 inactive or abandoned mines throughout the country, many in the West. And if you look at the Bureau of Land Management within the Department of Interior, 48,000 inactive or abandoned mine sites exist. The Forest Service has over 40,000 inactive abandoned mines along land that it manages. And so if you can imagine, if just 10% of these were creating environmental damage or harm to the environment, the sort of impact that would have and the enormity of the challenge that we face. So if you go back to the 106th Congress, you can start to see legislation that's been introduced dealing with the Good Samaritan legislation. Senator Domenici, Senators Salazar, Allard, Udall, a number of others, Ben Nighthorse Campbell, worked on Good Samaritan legislation to address these inactive and abandoned mine sites. 109th Congress, this committee reported a bill out that was written by Senator Allard, co-sponsored by Senator Allard and Senator Salazar. So given your expertise in hydrology, the work that you'll be doing at Interior, you're going to hold some Interior Department oversight ability and over our land management agencies as well. Can I ask your opinion of Good Sam legislation, where you think it goes and what we need to do?
Yeah, Senator, another great point. And working with that, and I know you have a long history even with Leadville in these different areas that specifically have mine issues that actually translate right into specific areas of water. So I look forward to specifically working with you on this 2015 impact that obviously has impacted multiple downriver communities, because those are the direct impacts that come out of that. So just based on our time and our effort, I really do look forward to sitting down with you, specifically your staff, which I've been working with for multiple years now, on how we can better work together and work with the Committee on EPW on behalf of reclamation on these specific issues.
Right. Thanks, Dr. Petty. Dr. Capuano, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gardner. Senator Heinrich.
Let me start, Dr. Petty, by thanking you for your candid answer with regard to climate change science. Dr. Capuano, is gravity real?
Pardon, I didn't hear that.
Is gravity real? I mean, it's just a theory.
Yes, it is. Gravity is real, yes.
We can't see it, but the data would suggest it's real.
Yes.
What is the preponderance that the data suggests with regard to climate change?
So the EIA does present for the data around greenhouse gas emissions that is used to debate on both sides of that issue. And we all know that it is very important to protect the environment and that we need to work towards that. But again, putting me into the position of taking a side on such a hotly debated issue would introduce bias as a leader of the EIA. And so as an administrator, I would have to refrain from answering that question.
Let's talk about bias then, because the EIA has consistently and actually spectacularly underestimated growth in clean energy, as well as growth in the gas sector. For example, solar generating capacity was 4,813% more in 2016 than the EIA predicted in 2006. And as another example, EIA predicted that 6.5 gigawatts of new wind generating capacity would be installed between 2017 and 2030. We're already installing more than that every single year. The data and EIA's bias seem to have a chasm between them. Why do you think that is, and what do you intend to do about it?
So the EIA is committed to collecting and presenting high-quality, credible data. In the modeling, the modeling activities and the data that's used in the models and the assumptions are transparent, so that as you compare the trends with the actual data, you can see what's driving the deviation. As a technologist and with the years of experience that I've had, I am very committed to making sure that the data continues to be high quality, that accuracy is increased, and that assumptions are improved. I'm highly committed to that. Independent of what the results are, meaning independent of what conclusions they lead you to, it is very important that the data quality continues to improve.
Do you think there's a problem at EIA with assuming that things will continue where they are rather than looking at where the trend lines are headed?
Allow me to separate that question. There are assumptions in the models that are used in order to create scenarios and are used in order to be the foundation of the trends. Those assumptions are always being looked at, and there is always room to correct those and improve those, and look forward to conversations to do that. Those assumptions and the data that's entered into the model will lead to a result. I'm having difficulty with the discussion of where's the bias is entered, is
well,
inserted
junk
into
in,
that.
junk out, right? I mean, that's what we all learn in
Well,
school. And so if you get the assumption spectacularly wrong, you will get data out the other end, or a result out the other end that doesn't match up with the data in a sometimes spectacular fashion. And I think garbage in, garbage out. As my
and quality in, quality out, and the data that's collected by EIA is.
Do you think those predictions, the results that EIA has given to all of us, have been high quality predictions?
I believe that the information that EIA gives you is high quality and it is credible, and that the sources are identified and that they can be improved continuously as the source of data is improved.
That didn't sound like a yes or no answer.
Oh, so excuse me, if you would mind re-asking the question, I could probably do a yes or no, please.
Do you think the quality of the predictions that EIA has made to this committee and to the public have produced good results that were...
EIA does not make predictions. What EIA does is it takes data and it models and it shows trends. And I believe those are high quality based upon the available information.
Dr. Petty, you are so lucky today. I am out of time, so I'm going to have to save all of my questions for you for the record. But thank you once again for being able to answer a question in a straightforward way.
Thank you, Senator. I look forward to actually getting some time with you and your staff in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Heinrich. Senator Flake.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for your willingness to serve. Yes, Dr. Petty, you have a lot of experience, obviously, at DOI, that will come in handy in this position. Because you have the Bureau of Reclamation within your purview, I'm interested to know your views on Colorado River water. I'm glad Corey left the building here for that. But can you describe your vision for the Bureau in helping craft Colorado River policy, particularly how you see the Bureau interacting with basin state representatives?
Yeah. Well, Senator, thank you so much. I think that is a very important question, obviously, that you're working on. You have been working on. You've been working on it for many, many years. You have fabulous staff that understand this question, just dealing with the drought contingency that you're working through, trying to cooperate, obviously building all the share takers. So, and also obviously the new commissioner with Brenda Berman coming from, your state. I think that the team that we've really put together, I look forward to being confirmed so that we can get specifically onto your areas, that we can work with you on how we're going to lay out specifically that has already been in the works with your staff and with the state in these specific areas.
Well, thank you. And specifically with outstanding water rights claims, fixing these, it's obviously beneficial for all water users, not just the tribes. The agency that you'll help supervise will play an important role here. You want to talk about the Bureau and USGS as it relates to Indian water settlements?
Yeah, Senator, it's very important that we continue to work through this committee specifically. A perfect example, obviously, for the state of Idaho as well, which we've been working on for multiple years with the success that we've had working with the Nez Perce tribe, but then the Coeur d'Alene as well as the Shoshone-Bannock tribes with water settlements are really important that we've been working on for years. So I look forward to working obviously again with your staff who fully understand the complexity of your state, because I really do believe it becomes even specific region by region and area by area that you're trying to work through each of those water settlements on. So I look forward to working with you, Indian Affairs at DOI, to work those through.
Great. There are a number of USGS institutions in Arizona. They do important work in research and data collection to support water management. These include Grand Canyon Monitoring Research Center in Flagstaff, Arizona Water Center in Tucson. Can you give some sense of how you see the USGS's role in continuing to provide this kind of research and data collection?
Yeah, Senator, there's almost 300 U.S. Geological Survey staff in your state that specifically works on very complex areas. Obviously, the Grand Canyon, the Glen Canyon Dam that has been a partnership with Bureau of Reclamation and USGS for years on studying everything from invasives to sediment transport to flora and fauna within those different regions, as well as obviously the ESA impacts that are there. So those are a combination of working together to really build the science that comes back to that information for you as policymakers, so people here on the Hill can move forward on what is the next step in the future of where we can go and putting in priorities for those specific areas.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Franken.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to just return for a second on Senator Heinrich's question. The EIA releases annual projections of long-term domestic energy consumption and generation in its annual energy outlook. Now, over the last few years, a range of studies suggests that EIA has consistently overestimated oil and gas consumption, and as Senator Heinrich said, vastly underestimated the growth of renewables, especially distributed solar. A study just last week from MIT reiterated the concerns surrounding the fossil fuel projections. The EIA responded to such criticisms in late 2016, but the agency has not indicated yet how it plans to address these inaccuracies pertaining to renewables. So I guess the question that more specifically than Senator Heinrich asked is what will you commit to working to improve the modeling when it comes to renewable energy?
So if I am appointed, I will, that is a very hot issue. It is a very important issue, and I'm very aware of that. It has big economic implications for the United States, and many people rely on the EIA data in order to do their analyses and make decisions.
Absolutely. I remember the propane crisis,
absolutely.
Which partly EIA, and listen, you get things wrong sometimes, and you get things right. But on this one, we're getting it wrong.
Yeah. On a theoretical level, improving assumptions, improving the types of data that go into the models, improving the models are theoretical ways to improve the accuracy relative to actuals. I can commit firmly that if appointed to this position, that I will be working very closely with the EIA staff to understand the deviations and how to reduce that and how to improve it. And I look forward to any kind of conversations that can help inform us on changes that might make the models more track more with what the actuals are.
Well, that's very, thank you for committing to that. Because of note, the scenarios in the annual energy outlook focus on high and low fossil fuel resources and technological change, but there's no scenario focusing on high renewable growth. Do you agree that a scenario focusing on the quickly changing landscape of renewables could be a way to address some of these issues?
Yeah, I'll acknowledge that we're looking hard at the scenarios and their effect on being able to inform people so that they can do the analysis that needs to be done is really important, and I can commit to take a look at that. Again, but I'm not there yet. I don't know the details.
Okay.
So I can't.
All right. In Senator Risch's subcommittee later this afternoon, we're going to be talking about energy storage. And energy storage is becoming more pervasive around the world, but it is not well represented in the modeling done by EIA. In the 2017 Annual Energy Outlook, the EIA committed to continuing to update and refine projections of technological change, work that is especially important for energy storage as it becomes more ubiquitous and increasingly grid connected. In particular, EIA committed to improving the representation of energy storage in future modeling work. Will you make model improvements a priority for energy, especially for energy storage?
Again, not being in the position yet, I am aware that the EIA is working on their strategy, renewing their strategy, and that I look forward to working with the EIA team and understanding their thoughts on this and their commitments. And I will pay special attention to these issues of storage.
Because storage is a real game changer.
I understand and I pay a lot of attention to those conversations as a citizen. I do agree.
Dr. Petty, thank you for your answer on the USGS's on making a commitment to not subverting scientific analyses. I know that Senator Hirono asked you that, and thank you for your answer. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Franken. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Petty. Can you commit that you put aside anything you learned from Senator Risch when you were going to this? Ms. Capuano, you were interviewed for this job. You went through a process, I presume. Did anyone ever ask you in that process your views on climate change?
I get asked that a lot.
Were you asked that question in the process of your being proposed for this position?
Actually, I don't. That may have come up. I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember all the conversations I've had. It may have come up. If it did come up, I did not express an opinion on it.
Were you asked any questions about fossil fuels and the importance of fossil fuels to our energy future?
Well, I guess I would say that in the process of moving through the nomination and the potential appointment process, people have helped me and guided me through that process. I'm having trouble with with saying, have I been asked my position on that? That was not the discussions around the process.
So no one in the process said, what's your views on climate change? Or I think you said maybe they did, but you would have said, I have no opinion? Seriously?
Okay. Actually, I'm trying to, this process has gone on since February, so I'm trying to remember all the conversations, honestly. And so the topics come up. But the discussion has really been on what needs to be done in order to get confirmed and in order to, complete the process.
But before you were being guided as to how to complete the process, somebody interviewed you to decide if you were the right candidate for this job.
I would say that in your volunteering to serve, it's not an interview for a position. When you volunteer to serve, during an administration, there's discussions around your qualifications and discussions around your desire to have an impact. But I have not had discussions around what my position is and how that would relate to how I would execute the position if I was appointed.
So is it fair to say that your testimony is that no one, when they were deciding whether to appoint you to this job, inquired about your position on climate change? Is that accurate?
No, I said that that they may have inquired, and I declined to take a position.
What is your position?
It would be inappropriate for me in taking a position, if I complete this appointment to be EIA administrator, if I'm successfully, if I'm appointed to this position, it would be inappropriate for me to state a position on climate change. The data, the data is. The data is available. EIA provides the data. There is, in fact, it has the high majority of the greenhouse gas data that is used on both sides of the argument comes from EIA.
That's why I'm asking you these questions.
Yeah. However, I don't, providing the data and drawing the conclusion, I leave the conclusions to the people that want to set policy or have a debate on the issue. If I enter the debate, it taints my independence, and I cannot present myself as unbiased.
So your testimony is you have not entered this debate at all.
No, I have avoided this. No, I'd say it.
You're avoiding telling me, but my question is: have you told anyone else in order to gain this?
No, I have not told anyone my position on climate change in order to gain the appointment. I can say that with confidence.
Well, that gets to the second question, which is really I consider your job one of the most important in the federal government. Because it's all about data, and we can't make good policy unless we have good data. And I hope that your position, which you've stated, which I'm not necessarily disagreeing with, means that you will be absolutely straight on the data. And what worries me is that people whose job it is to present information, data, such as yourself or the head of the CIA, not be tainted by the political desires of the people who you're reporting to. Give me your commitment on that.
You have my commitment that I will follow the data. And I will, and I have been fortunate not to have been pressured to take a position, and I would not, and I do not intend to be pressured to take a position.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator King. Dr. Capuano, I think you can tell from the questions, the inquiries here, that each of us wants to see that the EIA continue to play that role of a very unbiased, a very much an independent agency. And I hope that's where my colleagues are trying to go with this. And I appreciate that. Because I do think if you were to say that this is my position, rightly or wrongly, there will be others in the future that will say, aha, that conclusion that was reached through EIA is because you have an administrator that has taken such position. It's a difficult place for you to walk because I think, I think around here, it's important that we be able to articulate where we come from on these issues. But again, you are being asked to head an agency that is a pretty analytical agency. And if it's not analytical and weighing evenly all the data that comes in, I do appreciate the recognition, though, that it's important that that data be good, solid, unbiased, and, not the garbage in, garbage out, but the good in, good out. So let me ask you about the just the data collection. There's an incredible amount that is collected out there. This is the world of big data today. But having said that, there comes a point where the EIA doesn't necessarily need to be expanding the amount of data that it collects. You have overlapping data requirements that come to other agencies, whether it's other agencies within DOE or FERC, CFTC. The private sector also provides data about energy facilities and markets. You've got some overlap that could create inefficiencies, that could create burdens. Can you speak just a little bit to the effort that I think is important to avoid duplicative or perhaps overlapping, but also to making sure that as we seek to have as much data as we need, we're not expanding it so far that perhaps we have additional cyber risks, intrusions into privacy. There's a border here.
So I can't say that if I am appointed to this position, that one of the first actions I would take is going through the strategic plan and understanding the priority of the objectives and then looking at how to achieve the objectives in the most efficient and effective way with the budget that we have. And so while I don't know the details, because I am not there yet, that is the commitment I can make.
Are you concerned when we talk about cybersecurity and these risks? Can you speak to that aspect of it?
I am very concerned, but again, I'm not in a position to talk about the details because I don't know these details yet because I'm not part of EIA. I consider it a very important topic, and it's something that we all know that we need to be working to improve and secure ourselves, and that the EIA data, I am sure, has a role in that. And so I really do look forward to going through the strategic plan and setting the priorities and looking for the balances that are required. And we all know there's never enough money to accomplish everything. And so making very well thought out decisions on priorities and effectiveness is really going to be an important part of this role.
Well, we talk a lot in this committee about cybersecurity. It's important on a host of different levels. But recognizing just the volume of data that EIA collects, some relating to critical infrastructure, other relating to data critical to well-functioning markets, I think it is important that cyber be a high priority issue within the EIA, and making sure that that whether it's the regulations, but again, making sure that our critical infrastructure within the energy space is not compromised. Mr. Petty, one last question for you here, and that's relating to water infrastructure. We certainly recognize the need for water infrastructure, for hydropower, and for flood control projects to protect against drought. You mentioned stream gauges in Alaska. I continue to be astounded at how woefully inadequate our ability to just monitor or even get a baseline of what we have with our water resources. We've got extraordinary water resources, but when you have development in a certain area, before you proceed with that, you need to have an understanding as to the adequacy of your water sources. In terms of water infrastructure and water management issues, how big of a priority do you see this in this new role that you have been nominated to fill?
Yeah, well, Senator, thank you so much for the question, and it is a priority. The infrastructure aspect that we really need to be looking at, even within this body, that even have had multiple hearings here, has specifically talked about surface, subsurface infrastructure, specifically with water, pertaining specifically to Alaska. It's a huge challenge because you are dealing with so much adverse even conditions in climate that absolutely destroys gauges. And so every year you're just dealing with the impact that takes place there. And it is important that we still figure out how the best way to gather that information and data specifically for the state of Alaska. I'm really confident in which is also under the U.S. Geological purview, which is remote sensing capabilities, the technology that continues to develop, obviously the importance of Landsat, which also comes to this committee on these different areas and issues. So I really look forward to working with you and your staff on both sides of the aisle specifically on how we can continue to better gather information and data for infrastructure development, as well with water quantity and water quality.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm pleased that you are eager to take on this position. I think when I look at the issues that impact my state and the role that USGS plays, whether it's with mineral security that we mentioned or hazards, we've got our share of volcanoes and earthquakes and landslides and wildfires and flooding. USGS does considerable and important work there. And then on the water side, again, very, very important. So appreciate you bringing your expertise to bear on this, and look forward to working with you. Gentlemen, Senator Risch or Senator King, any further comments? Senator King?
Dr. Capiano, I'm going to say a sentence I never thought I'd say. You got my vote by not answering my question. I think that was exactly right, but to not answer the question for the reasons the chairman stated, and I think I associate myself with her comments. As long as you didn't answer that question to other people, which you've told me you didn't, I think that's an appropriate position for someone who sits astride the data collection process. What I have found, and why I think your position is so important, in my experience in public policy, if we have a shared understanding of the facts, the data, public policy is fairly straightforward and usually easy to develop. When we don't have a shared understanding of the data or the facts, it's almost impossible. And that's why what you're doing is so important at this moment in time as we're trying to make important, far-reaching decisions about energy policy in this country. And I just can't emphasize enough how important what you're doing is, and your background. It looks to me like you were preparing for this job all your life. You just didn't know it. And I think, but I just hope you'll remember it. And what you're doing is really important. And should there be efforts above you or from the side to influence what questions are asked, what data is presented, I hope you will resist them just as you did my question this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator King. I think that sums it up quite appropriately. Dr. Petty, Dr. Capuano, thank you. Thank you both for being here this morning. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Again, as I mentioned in my opening, it's my intention to try to move both of your names before the committee very quickly, hopefully so we can get things wrapped up before the end of the year. Both of these positions are important and necessary to Department of Interior as well as to the Department of Energy. So again, we thank you, and with that, the committee stands adjourned.